Welcome to those who are just joining us. We're going to get started in just a few moments. So again, just welcome to everyone that's coming in. I see everyone's getting signed in. Get yourselves comfy and ready. And we're just going to get started in just a moment, just letting people get signed in. Okay, it looks like quite a few of you have signed in. That's great. Thank you for joining us today for our Fire Safety for Rental Housing Providers webinar. I'm joined today with Angela Nottingham and Tom Collingwood from Vancouver Fire Radius Security. Before we bring them in on this, so we can see them here, just a few housekeeping things. If you have any difficulty hearing us, there are audio controls in the webinar toolkit there, so you can change your audio settings, make sure your speakers are turned on and plugged in. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we do want to get to your questions, so make sure that you put them in the Q&A tool. And like I said, just ask them as soon as you have that question, you think of it, go ahead and put it in there. We're going to get through to them throughout today's webinar. Hopefully we'll get to as many questions as we can, since we have these two great experts with us today. It looks like just a few more people have signed in, so welcome to those who just joined us. So again, before we get started, just a few announcements. One is actually just a piece of good news. We are pleased and proud to have been awarded the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations, CFAA, Association Achievement of the Year, in recognition of the work that we as an association have done on behalf of our members and really the broader sector in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was great to be recognized in this way. We thank you to the committee that chose us for this recognition, it's a great feeling to be recognized in that way. And again, before I bring the speakers on, I just want to thank you to our sponsor, the Home Depot. So just a message from the Home Depot. Home Depot is redefining your property maintenance experience with the power of one total solution. Home Depot brings you more of what you need to stay ahead, manage your inventory better, and improve productivity with solutions customized by our experts. Take advantage of the convenience of one-stop shopping for supplies and professional loyalty programs that will save you time and money. You can go to homedepot.ca/pro or contact our national account manager, so LandlordBC's national account manager, for further details. So again, thank you to today's sponsor, the Home Depot. So without anything else, I'm going to bring on Angela and Tom. It looks like your camera has frozen, of course, right as I'm about to bring you on. Okay. I'm going to just take a moment to bring them on. They're going to join us in just a moment. So while I am bringing them back on, there we go. Hello. You just need to unmute. In the audio controls, there should just be an option to unmute. So while they're getting that sorted out, fire safety obviously is There we go. Welcome. Fire safety is obviously one of it's one of the most important things that owners and project managers need to focus on, especially and even during this pandemic. It's it's something that can be an incredibly devastating issue for people when fires do happen in buildings, and we've seen this unfortunately a few times recently in the media of situations where buildings have caught fire, and in those cases it's a significant impact on tenants and their lives. So it really comes down to making sure that you are taking fire safety seriously, which clearly everyone here is. You're attending a webinar and increasing your knowledge on this. So I'm going to bring on Angela Nottingham to talk a little bit about fire radius and security, and then of course also Tom Collingwood, who's our expert on this. Angela.
Hi. Excuse the problem there, the technical difficulties here. We're still sorting it out. Again, my name is Angela. Vancouver Fire has been around for a long time, since 1948. It's BC's largest, longest established fire protection, fire safety, commercial security and monitoring company. It's family owned, which it just shows with the employees here and everything, the care and the love everyone has for this company. Something really special about Vancouver Fire, I mean, there's many things, but what I love about Vancouver Fire and why I actually chose to work here is there's many experienced techs. They've been here a long time. So what I love about that as a new person to Vancouver Fire, and I say I'm new, I've only been with the company for 6 years, is that because everything is ever changing, it's important to have a company that you have really experienced techs, because everything changes so much, the codes change and everything like that. So some of the highlights about Vancouver Fire, it's one stop. It's a company that has security here, installations, repairs, inspections, fire safety plans, fire safety training. So it's all here, and it's locally owned and operated. It's 24/7, and I can't say enough about it. I sound like I'm pitching it, but I came here 6 years ago. I have a background in sales, and I work with property managers, and I do small and large portfolios, and I help quote all the things that I just listed. So I'm the person that gives you the prices for it, and can give you a baseline information, but if we go deeper, technical, I would refer to my colleague and friend, Tom Collingwood. Oh, now you're muted.
Tom. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
There, you're back. Hello, my name's Tom Collingwood. I started with Vancouver Fire October 17th of 1983. When I started with the company, there were only 17 employees. We have 10 times that many now. And we've seen great growth over the last 20 years. I started off as a service technician, moved into managing a little bit into the 90s, and then in 2004, I became the director of fire services for the company. And I was in that position for 15 years. Of course, you have to look at bringing new people on as you get older. And I am in my last year or two with the company now. And so I've moved into managing the quality control for the company. And so what that entails is that if you have a problem at your building, or if I might just call you and say, look, I need to do a walkthrough and make sure that we're doing the proper work all the time, every time. And it's an important piece of it, because this is important stuff that we work on. And it's obviously, I've been here for over 37 years. It's a great place to work.
Clearly, that's great. That's fantastic. So thank you both for joining us today to share your expertise. And as you say, I mean, it is an incredibly important topic. Let's get right into some questions. The first one, really just kind of basic. Right now, with the fact that we're still in the midst of a pandemic, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still in this. Is in-suite testing necessary?
Absolutely. We stopped doing it for around 4 months when this first started last year. Of course, we had a lot less information about how to keep ourselves safe enough when we were going to buildings. We were still doing the core of the buildings, but we were not doing in-suite testing. We were as worried for our employees as the tenants are worried for themselves. And we started back into the suites. Of course, our technicians are wearing masks and gloves. We don't go into a suite if anyone is sick in the suite. We'll bypass those suites. Our technicians know not to come to work if they're not feeling well, or if somebody in their family is not feeling well. We've done everything we possibly can, and we have not had anyone in the company give it to someone else in the company. We've had a couple of situations where someone has had it outside, and of course they're gone for 14 days. And I actually had a situation where the exposure was not at the level that was enough for me to get COVID, but I was off for 14 days. As soon as I was close enough to the person and you can't come to work anymore, and we followed that. We're very rigid about that.
Safety first.
But since then we have been back doing in suites. And it's not just, I mean, a lot of people, the smoke alarm should be, a person who lives in a suite should be testing their smoke alarm once a month anyways with the test button. Make sure it's working, make sure that light is on. That's a normal situation. You should be watching that. But there are speakers or buzzers within the suite, so it's connected to the main building alarm, that have to be tested. That is your notification that there's an alarm in the building. If they're not working, there's a fire in your building, or that type of an emergency, you don't know. And nowadays, the way buildings are constructed with the insulation, it's so good that the hallway bells you're not going to hear them inside the suite.
Yeah,
you need the audibles.
Yeah, definitely. So it's necessary.
Well, yeah, and I think people are home a lot more too right now.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's for sure.
So the risk level goes. Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, when can a landlord, if they're feeling unsure, can they choose to refuse to have this type of in-suite testing done?
Well, it is a person's home, and a person can say, no, you can't come in, because they may be worried about us. At the same time, the thing is that because it's part of the fire alarm panel, the fire alarm will not get a good bill of health at the end of the service. I think we'll get as failed because we have not been able to test all areas. And we certainly understand at this time. And we can, if the person is sick, we do go back if we have this week, right? And we will go back and capture those, but at the time, if it makes sense, certainly if the person's worried, we totally understand that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm not an expert in this field by any means, but I've certainly, you read reports, you see things in the media every now and again. What is sensitivity testing on smoke alarms? Is this necessary? Does it cost more? What can you describe what this is?
Okay, the sensitivity testing is relating to actually the smoke detectors connected to the building alarm system, not the actual in-suite smoke alarms. It's actually, so what it is that the older systems, the new systems that are out, I'll give you a description of how they work. So the new systems, smoke detectors, they have a microprocessor inside of them. So for their test, so they know the sensitivity, because they're processing within the device. So it knows if it's working properly or not. And it will actually say if it has a drift tolerance problem. It'll actually tell the panel will go into trouble, and it'll say, the smoke detector in the hallway north, 3rd floor, drift tolerance, and it's gone out of its range, whereas for sensitivity. So those ones take care of themselves. The older systems, the older smoke detectors don't have that technology in them. And so what we have a sensitivity tester which goes over top of the smoke detector. And when you press test on the unit, it disperses just a limited amount of smoke. And that amount of smoke is up to what it's called obscuration, which is between usually 2 and 4%. And so if it goes into alarm at that point, then it meets the sensitivity that is required. And the key about sensitivity and sensitivity testing is it's about time. So the sooner the smoke detector detects the smoke, the sooner you will know there's an alarm and a problem in your building, and the sooner you can evacuate. If the hallway needs to be saturated with smoke before it goes off, of course, when you come out of your suite to evacuate, you can't even see.
Well, that's a problem.
That's why, and it's very important. It has been on the books for a number of years, and we've been we've been writing follow-up letters. We don't put it in as a regular quote into the building. We put it up as a follow-up repair and let the owners of the building make the decision on us doing it. It takes around 10 minutes for in a normal location. If it's a high device, like at the top of the staircase, it could take longer. And we need 2 technicians at the time to do the test. But right now, the fire department, because not only are these old devices not doing that, taking care of themselves, but they are getting older. And they're waiting every second. They're working every second. Is there smoke right all the time? So it's really important that they work. And now because they're getting older, the sensitivity is going, getting worse. And it's becoming more and more important. And the fire departments are enforcing it more and more now. And so we have it as part of our reports now. We show that. So we'll show that tested and pass on our actual reports.
Well, I guess that kind of leads into another question here, which is, how long should these smoke alarms last?
Okay, well, we're back to the Ensuites here, smoke alarms. I always want to distinguish between the two, the smoke detectors and the smoke alarm. So the smoke alarms in the suites, they need to be replaced every 10 years. That's their lifespan. And that is based on, environment and dust and just age. And so they've found that they get less than 60% a pass rate after 10 years on smoke alarms. So they had to pick a time, and they picked 10 years. Now, of course, if a person is checking their smoke alarm and they push the test button and it doesn't make a sound, then
they're not waiting 10 years.
Yeah, it's not going to make it 10 years. And if we go in and we test it and it doesn't work, of course, we're going to be replacing it and writing it up.
Of course. But the average,
for sure, at 10 years, it has to be replaced.
Okay. And so aside from, so that's exactly it. So that's, the testing is really there to ensure that throughout this, it is working throughout the tenancy. So I guess a question that's actually just come in from one of our members here is, when you do the inspection, are they checking for an expiration date on that? Is that marked on the individual alarms?
Yes, every smoke detector, every smoke alarm in the suite has a date on it. On the I have some smoke alarms in here, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that.
I see a few.
But it shows it right on the bottom of the smoke alarm, actually.
Look at that. Okay.
There's a year and month, right? So, and we do check it, and we and we track them. So it's on our report as well. It'll show, and it'll show if it's over 10 years old. It'll actually show, they just put old in the year, right? So they put old 2021, and we'll write it up that it's over 10 years old now. So, but if it's like 2019, if in your report today, you'll get, if we did your building today, the report you'd get from us would show the date is 2019. And they could be all different ages, because when they fail, or when someone moves into it, they might want to change it, or they've done some renovations. If they haven't covered it or protected it while they're sanding the drywall or anything like that, of course, it's going to ruin the smoke alarm. So they will replace it then too. So
of course,
they're not all going to be the same, but we check them all and check their date.
Yeah, I guess. So just to confirm, that date that's generally on there, that you put on there, or that's on it, is that the date that it was installed, or the date that it expired? But that it should expire.
That's the manufacturing date.
Manufacturing date. Okay, so that gives you so you can figure out from there that's good to know.
Careful when you buy it. You have to look. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Well,
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah.
That's.
Don't want to buy an old one.
So when going through, and you've gone through, you've done an inspection, and then an owner getting this report, if they get this report and they're seeing red X's, or deficiencies, what does that mean? What should they be concerned about?
Well, all the technicians who work, in the Lower Mainland area, we have to be certified by the Applied Science Technologies Technicians, ASTT, and part of their standard of practice that's only come out in the last 3 years is that when we find something that isn't working, that instead of just punching our tag, because our tag has a failed place on it to punch, they require us to put a red X if it's not working, to bring more attention to the deficiency. Because, you know, there's a lot of good fire companies in the Lower Mainland. So when they have your tags on, or our tag, other companies' tags are on the fire panel, when the fire department comes in and they glance over and they look at the tag, and they just see it, they're not up close looking at the punch. They're saying, oh, I know those guys, they do good work, and they don't worry about it. So they felt that if we put a red X on it, the fire department was what's going on here, and then they'd see, you know, see log and report, and then they'd look at the report and they say, well, you need to get this done. It's critical. And for an emergency light unit, it could be 8 feet up on the wall, so they wouldn't be able to see the tag. But with the red X on it showing that the unit is no longer working, it becomes it makes it more important. And as part of, and because of our certification, that's outside of the company, our certification, right? We're certified by that governing body, so we have to meet their standards. It's not a Vancouver Fire policy or any other service company's policy. It is the policies that the service technicians must follow, right, for our standard of practice.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's a visual cue that is. I mean, we all generally know that a red X is not a good thing. So that's great. That makes sense. Now, if you know you've done an inspection, you have something, you know, a company like yourselves going in and doing that inspection, and the result is that there are significant deficiencies that need to be addressed. How do you recommend an owner prioritize the work that needs to be done?
Yeah, that would require a discussion, right? You'd have to call call the office. The owners could to talk to me about it. We can go through, because I can pull it up on my computer and go through the list of, you know, there are certain things that if it's a smoke detector, it can impact obviously the safety in a big way in your building. So those are types of things you need to address right away. If you had a fire extinguisher in the hallway that required a 6-year maintenance, they're reliable enough that if it was 3 months down the road when we did the 6-year maintenance, because it's not going to, it needs a 6-year maintenance, but it still needs to be able to, they give some allowance for it to be working, because it needs to, if it didn't work at 6 years, it would be a real problem, right? So
yeah,
it will work for longer than that. So if you were to leave that for a few months and do the other repairs first, then this extinguisher would still, as long as it's in the green and it's still functioning, then it would be fine.
That makes sense.
To leave, right? But most of the items we work on, of course, are going to be related so much to safety. An emergency light, for sure. If you have a power outage and you don't have lighting in the stairwell, that's a major safety, right?
Of course.
I mean, it's really important.
Angela, a question for you. Are landlords required to provide tenants with fire drill training?
I'm going to have shorter answers than Tom, so but he'll probably add. Yes, they are. So the BC Fire Code and Vancouver Fire bylaws require documented fire drills to be held annually for low-rise buildings and every 2 months for high-rise buildings. So a fire drill is a rehearsed evacuation, and building occupants and employees are trained in fire drill safety. All supervisory staff of a building need to be trained before they take the position, and they only need to do this once, so they have to be trained once. We have an off-duty firefighter, like he's a firefighter, and when he's off duty, he does our training for us. It's actually doing a lot of it virtually now too. So yes, the short answer is yes, you do. And yeah, what would you like to add? He can't help himself.
No, I'm very good. No, that covers it.
I don't know if our viewers can tell, but there's a piece of plexiglass separating these two, which is great. Safety always. So another question for you. So when it comes to, you know, we talked about fire drill. Would part of this be included in your fire plan, and do you need to provide one?
do we need to?
Would the information about the fire drills be in your fire safety plan?
It would, I mean, like there is information, yes,
Yes.
there is, yes.
Yeah. And so with that fire safety plan, how do you know if it needs to be updated? Because I know that this is something that changes kind of constantly, really.
It does. It's, so I guess if your fire safety plan is older than 2015, or if you've done some major renovations to your building, it's gonna need an update. And I can send out, the memo that came to us, but basically what it is the Fire Prevention Officers Association of BC has asked for a few different things. So they want like a consistent template. I guess things are all looking different.
Yeah.
They've got, different codes and symbols they require now. They have additional building information. So if it's older than 2015, it needs an update.
And you mentioned, the other thing you mentioned though, is that if you've done significant renovations, so that's really interesting. That's something that, if you've made changes to the building, that needs to be addressed.
Right.
In your fire safety plan.
And it's hard to navigate that too, Hunter, like people won't know what, so that's why if you can send us the documentation, there's no charge for us to look at it and tell you, yes, this has to be an update. Because it's, how would anybody absolutely know that for sure?
Well,
so we've got experts here that can help that.
And that makes sense. I mean, the reality is there's a lot to know on this topic, and
so much,
that's why there are experts in it. So is it mandatory to have a fire safety plan?
Yes, unless, yes.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Unless there's the authority having jurisdiction, the fire department is the one that mandates that.
But the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Great. So Tom, looking at, this is not really the season for this, but nonetheless, how does the different seasons and winterizing your system, how does that play into fire safety and specifically the dry system?
Right, so you have two systems in your building, right? One will be in the parking lot, which is an area that's subject to freezing, which will be a dry system. And inside the building, if you're a fully sprinkled building, you'll have a wet system. So the wet system, like we have in our building here, you have water at the sprinkler head as soon as the head goes off from a fire. In the parking area, the sprinkler system is pressurized with air. And so when the sprinkler head goes off, the air needs to bleed off before the valve will allow water to flow to that point. So because the compressor is on an automatic system where the pressure goes down, it pumps it up, it goes down, it pumps it up. This goes on all year, and air has moisture in it. And as it pumps it into the system, starts getting cooler, it condensates and it collects in low points within your parking area. Some parking lots, we do have 2 low points, some have 50. And so we go through and we drain into buckets all of those low points and make sure there's no moisture at all, because you know how much ice will expand and it will break any fitting. Even though you look at the parking lot system and you think it's solid steel, I have gone and found half the system on the ground because all the fittings have popped, was flooded, and it never got dealt with. And so it's very important. And if we have a situation like that, your sprinkler is going to be offline. You're not going to have a sprinkler in your parking lot. It's not something that we can fix in just minutes. You can have a lot of broken fittings. Plus once it breaks then it floods. And if it's freezing, then you've got more ice and more broken fittings. So
that makes sense.
We do almost 800 a year.
Fantastic. That's wow. So this makes sense. It's just like any other system, especially with anything that's exposed and there's water involved. There's always that risk of freezing, and this is a perfect example of a bit of maintenance and preparation in advance can save significantly, and not just money in this case. The question that we have here is around insurance and investigations. So an insurance company of our landlord here is asking them to perform what they're calling a 5-year internal investigation. Can you, what is this? What does it entail? And why is it needed?
Okay, well, the first part is it's on your sprinkler system. We shut down the sprinkler system and drain off it's required on both dry systems and wet systems. So we drain off the air or the water. And then all systems have a main feed line, and they have smaller branch lines from that main feed line. So at the end of the feed line in the parking lot, you'd have a cap that would be 4-inch on that main 4-inch feed. 4 inches is pretty common on sprinkler parking lots. And so we take that cap off and we get a flashlight and look inside the pipe. And we're looking for rust or scale or organic or inorganic growth within that pipe. And the same thing with the wet system. We would open up the fittings, and once it's drained, and we would be looking for the same thing. And what happens is that growth, if it's old enough and the system's been in for such a long time. We've actually had a system in West Vancouver where the fire pump didn't operate properly when we're testing. And there was barely a 1-inch hole in the 4-inch line from the growth inside the pipe. We're talking a 50-year-old building here, but
Of course.
so you have for firefighting, you just don't have the water. And the other thing that happens is that if you have a smaller amount of growth where you still have good water flow, the rust or the particles within that system, the sprinkler head goes off, being only a 1/8 or 3/8 inch opening in the sprinkler head, a dime would plug it. And so what'll happen is that where you have the fire and where you need the water, you don't actually get any water because it plugs it up. And so the fire will grow because of that. So it's a very important test. And we do lots of those tests.
So, and so this is known as a 5-year internal investigation.
Yes.
So, and this is, okay, great. That makes sense. I mean, and that's something obviously you're not necessarily going to do every year, but yeah.
I mean, 102, and I'm just finding that more insurance companies are asking for it because we're getting a lot of requests to have that done. So obviously it's really important. I guess it's part of the code as well.
It is part
Yeah,
of the
it's
code.
code, but so.
Yeah, okay. So when it comes to, you go down buildings, the hallways, and you'll see those hoses that are there in the building, and they're generally there's instructions to not use them, or at least the owners and residents and people living there to not use them. Is it the responsibility of the owner to test them? Can they pull them out? Should they be testing? Should they be checking them themselves, or?
Well, that's the hoses fall under the code. That it's a part of the building requirements. So they would have we have a warehouse here, and we have 2 fire hoses in our warehouse that are required by code, even though the building is sprinkled. And lots of warehouses you'll go to, you'll find hoses as well as a sprinkler system. In an apartment building on the west side of Vancouver, we have 12-story buildings, don't have any sprinkler systems, but they have fire hoses. It is a code requirement. And so from new, they need to be hydro tested after 5 years, and then every 3 years after. Each hose, when we go to the job, we actually, we have a fitting that goes on where the hose was to check the pressure, and we flow water at the top hose to make sure that the system is pressurized, and we go and check the valve downstairs to make sure it's fully open. So you would have water. I know a lot of people, the fire department wouldn't use those hoses, which I think that goes back historically before they had line hoses, which had now the rubber hoses are in a lot better shape. Before they had line hoses, if there was a drip in the hose, they used to rot out. And the fire department probably had experiences where they turned the hose on and went to pull the hose out and it just fell apart, and they were just putting water onto the floor. And I mean, they'd still need to be served. You won't be able to take them out. You'd have to get an approval letter from the authority having jurisdiction and the city to remove them. They are still being put in a building. If like like a warehouse building, of course, in Vancouver now you're required to have sprinkler systems. So if it's sprinkled, you don't have to have the hoses, but it doesn't mean you can take them out. And I'll give you an example where there's a Hotel Vancouver, we do service there. They, about 10 years ago, they said, well, they'd upgraded a long time ago with sprinklers, and they read the requirement, said, if you have a sprinkler building, you don't require hoses. So they thought we could take the hoses out, but they can't. So they still have the hose.
There you go. Okay. Well, that's, yeah. So on the topic of monthly testing, kind of going back to where we started, you know, so when it comes to the monthly testing on the fire alarms, sprinklers, extinguishers, and emergency lights, is this necessary in terms of monthly? And is it something that the owners can do themselves? And if it is something that they can do themselves, what type of expertise should they have, and what sort of a training should they receive? Oh, it looks like we've lost Tom, Angela. There we go. Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
I can
hi.
still see you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Perfect. Yeah,
that.
that's no problem. That's the
This is the way we
reality
are.
we're in right now with technology. That's okay. I'm going to ask the question again.
Oh, we heard the question.
you heard the
We
question.
did.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could still, yeah. So you are, only the annual has to be done by certified technicians. It is a requirement to do monthly testing. It is in the code for having that,
Yeah.
and you must log it, and you must keep the logs for 2 years after doing that test. We do training for our customers. Now, depending on the type of building you have, if it's a 3-story walk-up, I can train for sure, and we can get through it safely, and it won't be overly stressful for the person who's doing the testing every month. Extinguishers, you know, I can go through that, and it's not overly difficult for you to go figure out how to do the monthly. And emergency lighting, we can walk through that. The monthly on sprinkler systems is actually a visual, and it's only the quarterly where you have to run water, where you'd want to have a service technician. Now, on the fire alarm, we can get through it on a low rise. Not a lot of outside functions other than audibles are happening when you're testing on a low rise. On a high rise building, on the newer ones with the newer panels, it becomes a little bit more difficult. When you pull the alarm, the elevators are going to come to the main floor, doors are going to open. When you reset the fire panel, the elevator is not going to go back to normal. You need to have keys to be able to reset it, and you have to know how to do it properly, because there's a sequence to a lot of them, and sometimes they don't restart right away, which could be a major problem in a high-rise building. People have things to do, they want to get out, they can't get to, they're not going to go up 25 floors to their suite. So
No.
that we can do training on that, but it can cause some grief for the people in the building who are doing the test, and it takes quite a bit of training. I've done some on those high rises. Usually they call me each month for the first few months, and I do the test with them. And my fear is that the test doesn't get done because it's overwhelming, right? So,
Well,
but certainly the other parts, I think that's important too, because you're checking all the extinguishers. We're only activating one pull station in the building, making sure all the audibles are, it goes into full alarm. And so we're only there for an hour, but to do all the extinguishers through the whole building and to check emergency lights and go to the sprinkler, there's quite a bit more
time-consuming,
time.
and it is quite
So
technical.
there's value in it to do a portion of it.
Yeah.
I think from on site for sure.
Cost-wise too. And
Cost-wise, certainly,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, but at the end of the day, it's something that you need to be very comfortable with and have that knowledge, and not be, really not be afraid to say, well, someone else needs to do this, and it needs to be professional in that field.
Totally.
We do weeks of monthly tests.
That's a big business for us. We do
Yeah,
a lot
we
of
do a
monthly
lot of them.
testing.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, like I said, it's, it comes down to when we're talking about fire safety, it is people's lives. So making sure that it's done the best way possible. I've heard of the term fire watch, and having a situation where you've been told that you need to go on fire watch. What is that?
So basically, if you are been told to go on fire watch by your fire service provider, that means something's not working properly in your building. So that would be like your fire alarm, your sprinkler system, emergency power system is not operating properly. We understand fire watch is expensive, and we try our very best to not go there if we don't have to. If we're putting you on fire watch, we obviously don't have the parts, we can't fix it right away. It's something's in trouble and we can't get to it right away, or we can't fix it. We need a troubleshooter. So you know, each municipality has their own bylaws that state the conditions in which fire watch is required. So it also details the fire watch procedures, but we're all aware that we don't want you on fire watch, want to get you off fire watch. It's our responsibility also, if we put you on fire watch, to let the fire department know that you are, so they can check to make sure you're doing that.
Of course, of course. What does it entail?
Well, I can give you like paperwork if anyone wants it, but there's different, like people be walking around checking. You know more about that than I do.
Be isolated to the area that the problem is. An example is that
24.
where I was saying about winterization. If the system froze and a bunch of pipe broke and we're not able to get the sprinkler, someone in the city of Vancouver, it's every 30 minutes. So someone would need to take a look in the parking lot every 30 minutes, and that's 24 hours a day, right? So it is a big problem. And of course, we have our red seal fitters are available for emergency calls over the weekend. So I mean, we would do as much as we possibly can to get it up and running, so that we could get you off of fire watch as quickly as possible.
And I mean, Hunter, this sounds like a little bit of a sales pitch, but I know, but do your repairs in a timely manner so you don't end up going on fire watch. If you see your fire alarm panel in trouble, get that fixed, because I think Tom can attest, it can lead to bigger problems, which take longer to fix. And so that's when you might end up on fire.
We throughout our webinar series, we've had quite a few experts on for different topics, and I think the one common thread throughout all of those is doing that homework up front, making sure that preventative work is done. Can be incredibly safe, and this is exactly an example of that. So let's just take a look. I think we have some more questions that have come in. So thank you to our attendees that are sending in these questions. So actually going to the fire safety plan update, we talked about 2015, I think was the year that you said. If it was older than that, or if you've done major renovations or repairs, you need to make sure that is up to date. And you said you'll help someone check to make sure that it is up to date. Do you help them with the update itself? Is that something they should undertake themselves or hire? I see you not.
No.
Go ahead.
No, we would help them with the update. Typically what happens though, if you go back to the person that originally did your fire safety plan, they have all the templates and whatnot there to update it. But by that point, if it's that old, I think because of all the changes and all the new templates, we could give you the quote for that. So yeah.
It sounds like less, especially if it is that old, it's less of an update in terms of changing. It's just starting kind of really new with something that's more
correct. There's quite a few changes.
Yeah, I've seen some of the code on that, and yes, it is a significant amount of change, and I mean really focused, as you say, on standardization.
Right, so they look the same.
Exactly, which makes sense. I mean, if someone is going from building to building, if there's an issue, this is a way of being able to see that kind
Absolutely.
of right off the bat. When you're doing inspections, do you inspect fire escapes?
That's not on our. No, we don't. That would be mechanical.
Okay.
Question though.
Yeah. No, that's a thank you to the person who sent that in. Can you differentiate, like, where is the cutoff for a size of building that has these more strict requirements? Does, like a comparison from a single family dwelling, a duplex, triplex, low rise 10-unit building, where do these, where is that kind of line where this very rigid, which makes sense, testing requirements hit? What is that mark?
Well, that would be on a building that would require like a full fire alarm panel system, right? As opposed to if it's a duplex, it would be treated more like a single family dwelling where you have just the 2 units, so you wouldn't have a fire alarm system,
Right.
a system like that. So for us, for testing, the buildings that we go, all the buildings we go into would, I guess the leap would be to a 3-story walk-up type of thing. We do a lot of commercial as well. So if it's a commercial 1-level mall or something like that, but it would have a full system in it.
Okay.
Not something that the fire department is not coming to a private
They
residence.
generally don't go to single family dwellings and such. Yeah. Do you know where is that cutoff in terms of number of units, size of building?
It's more about the fire alarm though.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that.
Okay, fair enough. So, here. So I see that one of the questions that came in is how often must buildings test their main fire alarm system and ring the bells by activating a full station? I think that you said that was really once a month for monthly testing, and then annually for kind of the full system testing.
Correct.
So another question that I'm going to answer, because it's come in a few times before the webinar and during here as well, is can tenants outright deny access to a rental unit for fire alarm testing? I know that from a company standpoint, Vancouver Fire and Radius Security is not going to go into a unit where a tenant is saying don't come in. But from a landlord's perspective, how can that be addressed? So like I said, I'm gonna just cover this one really quickly. It's a little more RTB focused. And the answer to that is no. I mean, if a landlord has served a notice of entry, so informing the tenant that they are coming in, or their agent is coming in, or a company on their behalf is coming in, such as Vancouver Fire and Radius Safety, if they've given that notice of entry and it's done correctly, then technically the tenant doesn't have a right to say no. And if they do say no, you want to work with your tenant. You want to try to, find out why. Are they, if they're not feeling well, they're sick, obviously, especially right now, that makes sense. The people doing the testing probably don't want to go in that unit too. But if it's just that they just don't want someone in their unit and there's no real good reason for it, then the reality is that the landlord is allowed to enter the unit. So if the tenant prohibits or tries to prohibit the landlord from doing this is a situation where you may need to document that and perhaps give a caution notice to that tenant, as it's obviously putting the building safety in jeopardy. Part of a fire safety, fire safety in general is ensuring that the whole building is being tested, and something that happens in one unit can obviously affect the whole building. So it is something that landlords can address with their tenants, and certainly should address. Really, like I said, obviously communicate with your tenant. Try to find out, why is it they don't want someone in there? Is there a way that your requirements can be met and also accommodate perhaps maybe the concerns that your tenant has? And obviously right now that increased sensitivity needs to definitely be in place for obvious reasons. We're in the middle of a global pandemic and people are concerned. So just going on to kind of some more questions that have come in. So for are the types of alarms that you're generally looking at, are these hardwired detectors in units? Are they battery? Do they have backups? If they are, go ahead.
They're the Ensuite units, everything we deal with now are hardwired with battery backup.
With battery backup.
Yeah.
Okay. And what if they, perhaps it's a system that maybe is older, if they don't have a battery backup, is that safe? Is there, what should be done about that?
Well, we of course, we follow the 10-year requirement for replacement. They did meet the standard at the time when they were installed. It was probably over 10 years ago, because the ones we pull out now that are 10 years old have battery backup. Most of the ones we're pulling out now.
Okay.
And of course, they have different designs, some you can't tell. Like the one I've got here, they've got it on the side of it, so that it's, when you look at the bottom, usually you see the mounting in the bottom, and there's nothing here in the bottom, but they've tucked it away in the side here, so it's slides in here.
Right.
And when you first look at it, it doesn't even look like it has the battery backup in it, but they do. But all the ones, actually it's a code requirement now that they have battery backup. Clearly, if you have a power outage, it's kind of the worst time, because I mean, if people don't have flashlights, they might have a candle to use for light, and here you've got a higher hazard level and no protection. So the batteries are really important, and it is a code now that it has to be battery backup.
And really, as you say,
we can't even find them. We don't. We can't buy them. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't think anybody has them.
that's exactly what that's good. Another question that's come here is, if you have a damaged sprinkler head that's causing flooding, can building management shut off the water, or should they be contacting the fire department or a company like yours?
Well, if the head has been just been, like, if someone is moving a couch and they've hit the head, it's not a fire, and they clearly know that the water that's coming out is from this head, and I know how, and I broke it. The building manager should be aware of it in that stairwell, because every stairwell has a shut off. Where that is and how to shut it off. The amount of damage that can be getting 20 to 30 gallons a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
And with the fire department, they're arriving, they don't know other than the monitoring company. So hopefully someone in the building has also phoned and said, we've broken the head on the 5th floor in a suite, and it shut off quickly. But it's as long as you're 100% sure that this is why the alarm has gone off and why you have water flow, that it isn't fire, then it would be a good idea to be able to shut it off. We've have lots of buildings, and it's amazing the amount of damage.
I've seen that type of damage. It is significant. So with those sprinklers, if one is triggered because someone hits it, for example, they're moving furniture, that sort of thing, does that trigger the whole system? Do the rest go off, or is it isolated to that one?
Just the one. The one actually has a rubber seat on it that holds back the water. The water pressure is just sitting there, and when the element inside either it's been broken or it's melted, it just releases the water from that single location.
It always looks a bit different in the movies, doesn't it? All the sprinkler heads go off. But that's
well, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Is that, I mean, I every time I'm in a building now and I see them, I kind of look up and worry. The water that comes out is also generally not particularly clean, so that's always. But it does save lives in buildings, for that matter. So,
yeah, it's very rare for them to go off for no reason. Their fail rate. I think it's one.
It's reassuring.
Yeah, one in 20 million, I think, is the fail rate on a sprinkler head. But they'll just go off for no reason.
I just learned something new. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, well, I think we're gonna call that here. Thank you to both of you for sharing all this information. Thank you to the people who sent in your questions. You know, like I said, we'll be sending out a thank you email with contact information for Vancouver Fire and Radius Safety. And also stay tuned to our e-news for information about our next webinar. So again, thank you both for attending today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay.